I know, you're thinking, Ralph, what's happened to Ralph's house? It's all right with this pinball stuff, but what about all the other stuff? What are you doing on your house? Well, a couple of reasons why you haven't seen anything on Ralph's house. One, I haven't been very well. I should talk about that in a minute. And secondly, my parents died and we're still clearing the house. Well, clearing the garage now. The house is already done. Anyway, welcome back to Ralph's house. Yes, welcome back to Ralph's house. I am stood in my stepfather's former workshop. He was a wood turner, and a lot of it's gone, been taken by other people and sold for practically nothing in my view. But anyway, he was a wood turner and sort of did it as a hobby. But you know, when you spent hours and hours and you had a lathe here, he had a lathe there, he had, I think it was a 16-inch plane of thickness, a three-phase. You know, there's three-phase in this house. Not many houses in this street with three-phase, but he's got it. And I think he got it at a reasonable price as well. But there's a limit, isn't there, to what you can put in the boot of your car. So on the basis that this house is going up for auction as is, you know, we just decided enough's enough and we're not clearing any more. But I brought these tools today because my stepfather had a contractor's table saw, a big one. It's about 4 foot across, 4 foot by 2 foot, the bed. And it's got a really strong motor on it. So, you know, it'll cut through oak, sort of that depth, you know, no problem, like butter. And I've used it a few times. Vicious thing, but it's so damn useful. So I decided that was the one thing I wasn't going to sell, but it's too heavy. So what I've been doing is stripping all the bits down from it. These chrome poles came from it. That's the motor from it. That weighed a fair bit, because I think if I'd tried to get this table saw out in one lump, well, I'd have broken my back. There's no way I'd do it. My son, who's not used to that kind of work at all, he'd have got hold of one end of it and go, no, can't lift it. No, I can. I mean, I'm 64, 5, I don't know. But I can still lift quite a dead weight, you know, if I put my mind to it. Because, you know, during my lifetime, I used to pick up engines and just sling them about. That's what my life was. Till I went to a much lighter job, painting and decorating. That's what I'm doing in my semi-retirement. I'm quite happy with that. And bear in mind in my life, you know, I've been a college lecturer with degree, BTEC, City and Guild students, A-level students, and I enjoyed it. It was very rewarding. A lot of paperwork, but well paid. So, you know, I've got a bit of an academic background. But as I've got into me latter years, I just decided I didn't want to think anymore. So that's why I'm a painter and decorator now. And occasionally people come up and say, don't you find that boring? I said, no. I'm just, look at me, I'm cutting in the paint at the top of the ceiling and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if you can make chocolate Yorkshire pudding. So this is the point, because I don't have to think anymore. They just say, paint that wall. Right, I'll paint that. And I'll just, you know, drift off. And that's what I want in my latter years. I don't want masses of responsibility. Anything that I really want to do, I want to do my own time for myself, you know. So I'd rather have a mundane job. Anyway, so that's the base of it. That's the top of it. 2 cast iron sides. Doesn't show very well on the camera, but they are big, these things. And I've had to bring in all these tools today just to take it apart, but I was pretty determined. It was just trying to work out how I could reduce the weight. I knew if I got the motor off, that would help, and taking the legs off it and some of the cast iron top off it. But I don't want to strip that down any more than I have, because it just gives me a lot of problems trying to realign everything again when I set it up the other end. And who knows, when I finish with it at Ralph's house, I may well sell it. I don't know. But we have got a workshop to construct indoors, and we're going to need something like that, and we really are. Nothing else would cut wood as quick as that does. So that's where I am today. I'm definitely not at home, and hopefully I can get some of this home today, and that'll be that out of my hair. Some things we just couldn't get rid of in this workshop. Look at these, like half a tree, but you know, there's another one there, whole tree trunk in there. Russian pine, I'm tempted to take away 2 lengths of that because that wood's really good. Mike actually gave me a length of that to go in my fireplace. I don't know if you watch some of the early roll sounds, you saw I put a wire wheel on it. It was this stuff, and it's really, really strong pine. There's no woodworm in it, and I may well use that for my railway platform at the back that I also discussed in an earlier Raoul's house. Anyway, welcome back. Right, back to some more Raoul's house stuff. I'm actually at work. I've finished work now, and I've got these 2 bits of wood that I've been using an electric sander on it because they had a coat of varnish on it. You don't really want varnish on oak. You want an oil, something like that, to stop it drying out. And these are 2 of the sides for my Brian's Pilwin machine, which even my father said, because it disappeared from his wall one day, because they were both owned by him. He had 2 of these machines, and I said, "Where's the other machine gone?" He said, "Well, it needs a little work, and I'm sure you'll sort it in the fullness of time." It was rather nice, actually, that my father had got that sort of confidence in me, but he did, you know, because he knew I was quite practical. And yeah, the case was pretty bad. Look, here's some clips of what it used to look like. And anyway, so what I did, as I say, I looked through my stepfather's workshop to find some oak. I managed to retrieve some, but I'd been passing this bookcase in the hallway. It was a varnished bookcase, and I thought, I'm sure that's oak. Anyway, it wasn't a huge bookcase, but I tried to lift it, and it was heavy, and I thought, yeah, that's oak. And you can also tell by looking at the grain. It's very close in places. I love oak, it's got a nice finish to it. And when you see advertisements online, even on Facebook Marketplace, and it says real oak table, or it says solid oak, and you look at it, and no it isn't, it's made out of little sections all glued together, because oak's expensive now. If you want to buy a board like that, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. So I'd already got 1 bookshelf, didn't really need any more, and they passed on, so I'm sure they won't mind now. So I cut the bookcase up and managed to pull out all the wood I needed to make a brand new case. So today, I've sanded that down. I should probably bring in a couple of others in the week. And I like these because, you see, they've got these little dents and things like that, which will be right. It'll sort of semi-age it. So what I'm not looking for is a pristine finish. You know, we're not looking for a top-of-the-range piece of furniture. We want a case that looks like it's been around a few years, got a few knocks and dents, and it'll be about right. And I did save one side, or I think it was the top, because it had a number stamped into it, which would be the serial number, and I can't replicate that. So I kept that piece of wood, and I'm going to alter the case slightly so it fits in, but then that should put it back in good working order and still have the serial number on it. And also the back of the case, which was I think that's pine mostly, and it was quite split. I'd glued that had also got the serial number in it as well, so I've retained that, even though it's tempting to put in a new piece of wood. You know, you have to find a compromise with things that are old, don't you? So yeah, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish that with one of 2 things. It could be teak oil, which is pretty good, stops the wood splitting and drying out, and you just do it every now and again just to keep it in good order. And then all you have to do is, you know, give it a spray of polish or whatever, beeswax. Or I could use linseed oil diluted with white spirit. That's another way of doing it. I think I may have some linseed oil. My father was very fond of linseed oil. I don't know what he used it for. Piles, probably. Anyway, I'm sure he's got some in his shed. Or what was his shed. And actually, a lot of the things my dad had, and my stepfather, have really come into their own, you know, including the saw that I've just mentioned, the bench saw. And actually, instantly today, I picked up the motor, which was fairly heavy, My son didn't even offer to help me with that. He just watched Dad struggle with it. Anyway, I've got that home. I've got the base home. Now all I've got to do is get the main top, the main chunk of it with the saw blade attached. I've got to pick that up tomorrow in my car, but I'm going to need my son to help me get it in, and then we've got that out of the way. The only other thing I've got to get from there is a woodworker's bench vise. And as my son pointed out, and somebody else said, oh, you better take that vise, because they're not cheap. And I don't have a vise at home. I've got metal vices, but I don't have any wood vices, so I'll be picking that up as well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing today on a Monday, and with a bit of luck, if I get some more time in the week when I finish work, I'll sand a couple more, and then I'll have all the sides. And the originals were nailed together, which is not great because nails go rusty and then they start to stain the wood over the years. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use proper hardwood dowel joints to fix the whole thing, glued together, the back in. That'll be fine. That'll last for years, and it'll look just like the original case, won't it? There you go. And returning to pinballs for a minute, I bought this in the week from a nice chap called Tony down in Oxfordshire, and this is a Keeney Sons 1932 Rainbo, and he's done really well bringing it as far as he has in terms of restoration. He informs me a widow of a man was selling off what he'd got left, which would have been difficult for her, I imagine. But yeah, and I got this at a good price, I think, and not too much to do. It takes old pennies and uses, I can't lift it up at the moment, but uses ceramic balls, different coloured ones, and you get, it's very simple. It's not like a pinball as you'd know today that's got flippers. Pinball started off as basic bagatelle, and of course you can still buy bagatelle, with the pins and that sort of stuff drop into the slots. But obviously they saw potential here for getting money, especially in clubs. So as time went on, they added more electrical based stuff in these things, flippers and lights and all the rest of it. But like most of these amusement machines, they're just mechanical devices designed to deprive you of your change. And this one was made in Chicago, and then it came to Britain. I forget the name of the company, but they would have modified it so it took an old penny. But yeah, not too much, and it's rather a nice one. Yeah, let's have a quick look across it. Tony replaced all the pins on this, and he did a little bit of touch up here and there. But there you go. There's the instructions for it. 10 balls for a penny. Yeah, in nice condition. So what I'm looking for now is something like a 1930s side table. Maybe barley twist legs on it, something like that. It was often the sort of thing people throw out there, but as long as it's the right length for that, then I can actually sit this on a proper table, which would be nice. Yeah, so that's it. That's the Keeney and Sons Rainbo, and I'm sure you'll see more of this in the fullness of time. And early in this video I mentioned that my health hadn't been too good, which has put me back, well, if I was honest, it's put me back probably almost a year, but the last 6 months have been particularly bad. But before I talk about that, I was just going to show you these. These were the legs and part of the headboard, I think. Rather fancy wood, isn't it? From my mother's 4-poster bed, and I really struggled to sell that. Not everybody wants a 4-poster bed, do they? And especially when it's ebonised wood like that. So in the end, because we were kind of pushed for time, I said, look, I'll break this bed up and I'll take these posts, and I'm going to make good use of these in the house. And if you look at them and then you think about it long enough, you'll come up with a solution. Yeah, so talking about my health, I've always had trouble with my knees, and you kind of expect that as you get older. It's been like that since I was about 15 52, that sort of started. I thought, oh well, onset of old age, that's what's to be expected. And I was kind of living with that. That wasn't too bad. But then they started to really be painful during the night. And then I had what I thought was pancreatitis. It was in the right area. But it turns out what I'd done, and I wasn't diagnosed by a doctor, I had to work all this out myself. I had a herniated disc and low down in my spine. And I know that because I spent about a week in bed recovering from it. I just couldn't move. If you've ever had that kind of backache, you know what I mean. All you can do is lay there until it's bearable enough for you to move again, and that's what I had to do. But there was a sort of side effect of it, and in the very base of your, well, actually it's in your posterior. You've got two muscles through which the sciatic nerve runs, and of course I thought at first it was sciatica, and indeed it is in a way, but because the sciatic nerve runs through that muscle, it was constantly being inflamed. The result was going to work each day, I was having to take something like 3 ibuprofen, which is excessive. You shouldn't take more than 2, by the way. It's not good for your stomach, just to be able to get into work. And even then it hurt like hell just walking from the car park into work each day, and that had gone on for months. And they gave me some, it's like a synthetic morphine, very low dose. So, you know, I wear a patch on my arm, can you see that? And that helped quite a lot. But I'd still had this problem of, you know, some days I was just so stiff I couldn't move. First thing in the morning, it'd take it was at least 2 hours. I had to be up 2 hours before I go to work just to limber up enough to go in. So fairly recently, they decided to put me on naproxen, which isn't a painkiller as such. It's an anti-inflammatory, but it's much stronger than ibuprofen. Oh boy, the difference. You know, in the last few days alone, to be able to move, and I'm aware that there's a slight pain there, but it's bearable. And the problem is when you've got inflammation to that degree, and it was appalling, you can't move much, you can't really exercise, and of course the muscle tone goes down. But now, you know, that inflammation's been relieved, I can work a bit harder. I've been working quite hard today. I'm lifting some heavy stuff about, and not too much of a problem. But what it's doing is it's now rebuilding all the muscle that I'd lost. And my hope is that sort of over the longer the term, if I just keep going like that, it'll build up strength in all those areas which I've presently got weaknesses in, and I should be able to, well, it should improve my mobility no end. But what would you do with these? It's very tempting to use it almost as a newel post on the banisters. It's rather fancy, isn't it? But I think I'll save those until we really get into the front room this year and start stripping paper, and I'll work out how I'm going to use these. But they're just too good to throw out. They really are. Nice piece of wood. Yeah, there's another all-wind machine. I was talking about cases earlier on. This one though is pine, but I try and keep true to what they were. As I say, the other machine was oak, so oak it had to be. You know, would have been cheaper to make it out of pine, but it wouldn't be right, would it? Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we've been clearing my mother's and stepfather's house, and it's been a very long process. I'm keeping that. Decided I'm going to keep it. I didn't like the cushions on it, but I'm keeping it. And that is going to go today. I'm giving it away. It's a big bit of furniture. It's rather nice, but yeah, too much fuss trying to get that in my car to the tip. And other than taking it apart for these spindles, it's not much use to me. A lot of people don't like big furniture like this now. And this shelf, I did put this up on Facebook Marketplace, but I didn't have any takers for it because the top's mahogany and that's burr elm. But to be honest, it can stay with the house. That's not original. I think at some point my mother took a fancy to it, and my stepfather cut it to fit in the chimney breast as best he could. And I think, I don't know if it still works. Yeah, put a light on. lights up the coals. Quite a nice effect, isn't it? Yeah. Almost tempted to take it. No, I end up with just too much stuff. This is the problem. And although I've taken a lot of stuff to the tip, what invariably happens is you think, well, I don't know what to do with that. So I've taken it to mine, and of course now my house is full up. So I'm doing tip runs next week, throwing out things that were either from here or mine, because these are better. And my poor car, which has become a skip in recent weeks, while we're clearing the house and stuff, and bringing stuff home, brought home this plastic step, because at work I have to use an elephant's foot to stand on, and it's not light to carry, you know what I mean? And I just find, you know, it doesn't do me back any good, but this is nice and light, so I thought I'd take that into work. Also found some hose pipe, which is far better quality than anything I've got, and this huge pole which goes all the way into the footwell. It's the only way I could get it in. That is from my railway platform, and my stepfather promised me that, so I fetched it today. Also a bench angle grinder, which had been sitting in the workshop. That's a good one, got a good motor on that. Some more bits of oak, some more bits of mahogany, and a very long board of mahogany. I just couldn't bear to leave it. There's about, it must be over 100 quid's worth of wood in that alone. So yes, I've now got to empty the car yet again. I'll be glad when this is all over, so that I can actually clean and give this thing a proper valet, you know, because it's full of sawdust and moths and spiders. That's what happens when you move stuff out of an old house, isn't it? And there you go. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.